Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be watching a video called Soccer Explained for Americans. I have to say I'm really excited to check this out because I think I know like the basics, the rules of football or soccer, depending on where you are in the world. It's 90 minutes. There's two halves. There's 45 minutes and then another 45 minutes. There's no like halftime as in like a Super Bowl or actually I don't know if ever like a football game has. Well, I think they do have like halftime when there's like someone comes along and performs. I don't know if each game in American football has that or it's just a Super Bowl. But I know that in soccer, like that's not common. Like you just like I don't know, you go to a break, go grab a beer or something. Like there's no show. Like the players are resting and you as an spectator, you just like I don't know, you also rest. and I don't know, I know there's different positions. Obviously obviously the goal is to score, that's the actual goal. You have to like get past, the ball has to pass through the opposite team and you have to score, and there's a goalie and there's several like positions. I know you have like the defenders who are the ones that they don't want you to like actually get the ball into like they have to like it's defense, right? So they have to like defend the whole like field or something. And I know there's like midfielders, no idea what they do, no idea if that's just for specific games like a strategy or something, or they always have midfielders. Maybe those are the ones that like pass the ball. I'm unclear. And also obviously the ones that score, right? Like that those are usually I think like the biggest like soccer stars. I think those are like that's the position that they have, right? Because they're the ones that everyone's like, oh yeah, you're cheering for them because they're the ones that are actually like scoring the goals. So I think those are like when you think about like football superstars, I think they probably all are like the ones that the scorers. I have no idea what that position is called. So I'm excited to learn because like I don't really know much about it. So let's check it out and comment, like, subscribe, and start. What do you mean the stretcher? Because you're like,
I've been wanting to start following soccer for a while now, but as an American, I always found it complicated. Not like how they play. Most 3-year-olds can kind of understand more or less how it works.
It's
I just mean how everything kind of works in Europe.
The ball, exactly.
I would follow the World Cup, and I'd root for the United States if they made it. And then I'd root for Iceland because clearly they've all been practicing that clapping and they're really good at it. But it only happens once every 4 years. So I turn on my TV and it would be like a random game like Parma versus Bologna. And first I'd make sure that I wasn't watching the Food Network, but then I had no frame of reference for this game. Like, are these teams good? Is this a big game?
No idea.
Which one of these guys is Pele? I didn't know. And I had all these other questions. Why are teams getting kicked out of leagues? Why are they all rolling around on the ground so much? How are guys getting traded to different countries? And why does everybody in the stands have a scarf? So a few months ago, I tried to start figuring it all out. And I started watching some matches. That's the first thing. They aren't soccer games. They are football matches. And I bought FIFA for my Xbox. And I bought a scarf and a vuvuzela because that's like the rules or something. So anyway, this is all...
Yeah, I think the scarf has to be like...
I'd known a year ago.
Of your team.
My crash course of translating soccer into American. I'm going to assume that you kind of know the rules. The biggest difference between American sports is how offsides works and the clock. Lots of people get
idea how offside works, actually.
It goes up instead of down. Get over yourself. It doesn't really matter. Americans also get mad because the clock doesn't stop and games pretty much end whenever the ref feels like it.
Yeah, that seems normal to me.
You actually adjust to this pretty quickly. The game's an hour and a half long. You'll have your chances to score. And if you can't score, then it's not the clock's fault.
Exactly.
Some people, and when I say people, I'm referring both to discussions I've had with other Americans as well as like myself 6 years ago. So people think soccer is too slow. And when Americans look at a soccer field, something in our minds, we think that it's like playing hockey or playing basketball just on a big grass field. And in those sports, guys like go full tilt a lot, like most of the game. So when two players are just standing there passing the ball back and forth, we wonder, like, why aren't they trying to move forward? Just go. And on the other side, we expect the defenders to be attacking the guy with the ball rather than just standing 5 feet back
their defense.
letting him do what he's doing.
You have to
The
let
key
them
difference
play.
is that football pitches are much larger than basketball courts.
It's
and
true.
hockey rinks.
They're so big.
And if you tried a full court press for the whole soccer game,
They're going to
you
end
would
up
be
dead.
exhausted and you would probably lose.
They're going to end up
So
dead.
the pace of a soccer game is actually much closer to baseball. Most of the game is
No,
going to
no.
consist of guys just slowly passing the ball.
Well,
around.
I don't know what games
Real
he's
peaceful.
watched, but there's games that
And then
it's pretty
gonna be
active.
all of a sudden followed by these short bursts of extremely fast action.
Yeah.
Basketball players, it's estimated, run an average of 2.5 miles during a game.
Wow, yeah, the soccer players
can
are the ones that run the
7,
fast.
if not 10 miles during one game.
Well, not fast,
And
it's
remember,
the
you only get
longest.
3 subs games, so most of these players will be playing the whole game. One thing Americans will appreciate is that other than halftime, there are no commercials. So it's like the anti-NFL, which is great.
Oh,
It
yeah.
also means that
yeah.
no matter where the ball is, both teams are always potentially about 30 seconds away from scoring, which creates
Yeah.
this kind of constant
That
tension.
you have to be
It
there
also creates
watching
a scenario where you can't ever really run to the bathroom or get a drink.
because you're missing
Soccer
it.
players seem to have a reputation for being lazy in the U.S. because they don't always pop
Lazy?
right back up after going to ground and get right back into play. Certainly, some players do embellish things, and some go over the top. But I don't really
I
think
guess-
that
I
on
guess
the whole,
it's
it's
true.
quite the issue that people make it out to be. So they get made fun of in Europe too. So here's a
Yeah,
fun
it's like
experiment to try the next time you have
everyone
a few
makes fun of
minutes.
it.
Go to like a local field and then quickly jog laps around that field for like 10 minutes.
You're gonna
And
end up.
suddenly sprint down the middle of the field as fast as you can. And when you're halfway up the field, while you're still sprinting, have one of your friends just shove you over onto the ground. And if you can pop right back up and keep sprinting, then you can keep complaining about those guys. A lot of the
Yeah.
time, they're just taking a little rest. And everyone will either just keep playing around them, or both teams will be a little tired, so who cares? It's not a Matthew Riley novel out there.
It's true.
The other
It
reason
never occurred to
for
me. They're
guys
just
slowly
resting.
passing the ball around is that one of the strategies currently employed by most teams is to maintain possession as much as possible.
Hmm.
Obviously, this is no different in American football or why Russia is really good at hockey. The other team can't
Are
score
they?
when you have the ball. So teams will just pass the ball back and forth and even pass it back to their own goalie because it's better to go backwards with the ball
That don't
maybe
have the
make
ball.
a risky pass and let
Yeah.
the other team have the ball. On occasion, you'll see a team make like 50 passes without the other team touching the ball, which can take a really long time, but then they'll go down and they'll score, and that's like as good as it gets. It's all
Well, you're
about
getting-
waiting
yeah,
for
having
the
beer.
precise moment for things to align and then all going together at the right moment. In terms of like positioning and formations, you'll usually have 3 or 4 numbers, like 4-4-2,
Oh,
4-3-3,
okay, those are the positions.
4-2-3-1. These numbers will always add up to 10, and then the goalie is just assumed. Different
Oh,
positions
says
include
lower.
the center backs, who just stay as defenders, and then the full backs are both the left and the right back, who will defend, but then they'll also usually join the attack as well.
Of course, they
And
go
then we have
through like
midfielders, like a
there.
center midfielder who can go both ways, a center attacking midfielder or a center defending midfielder. And then up front, we have like a left wing and a right wing, sometimes a center forward, and a striker up front it's his job to just score goals.
Oh yeah, the striker is the one.
One thing I'll mention that
ones
makes it
that score.
easy to kind of get into soccer is that you can legally watch some old matches on YouTube. This is
Okay.
unlike American sports. Like, why isn't there a website that I can go to watch any game, like an iTunes for sports?
Isn't
Like,
there?
I can pay $2 to watch any game in history. Like, all these games are on tape somewhere. They exist. But I can't watch a game in the 1986 World Series unless an
Really?
international pandemic shuts down the world and there's no sports. They just happen to put it on NBC or something. Like, come on.
Okay.
So anyway, so keeping the ball and attacking is referred to as positive football. You're always trying to move forward. This is what most teams do. This is what people like to watch a little more. It's kind of
Yeah.
exciting. It's more exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's more entertaining.
But of course, there's always a yin to the yang. So the yin is this guy named Jose Mourinho. And he basically says, I don't want the ball. I'm going to stand back with my players in front of my goal, and
He's
you're
not
not
a
going to
player?
score. And then every once in a while, when you're falling asleep and all your players are up in my zone, we're going to steal the ball and we're going to run down and score, which sounds a little bit risky. Except
Yeah.
that it actually does work if you do it well.
Okay, it
He's
worked?
considered one of the best managers there is.
Oh,
And he
okay.
has the trophies to back it up. He's
Okay,
won
great.
Plenty of big tournaments with teams that I'm told if you tried to have that team keep the ball the whole time, like most coaches would,
Yeah.
they would have been destroyed. They were too
Oh.
old and they just would have got worn out. And
Okay, well,
wiped out.
it's a
But by
strategy. It
playing
works for
this
him.
negative defensive strategy, they were able to win. And despite this, teams that employ this strategy seem to get a bad rap for playing negative as opposed to positive football, because keeping the ball seems to be the in thing right now.
Yeah.
So obviously there's more thought that goes into it than I've described here. Like Diego Simeone and Atletico Madrid has been using this negative strategy for years, and they've been successful with
Their
it.
managers.
On the flip side, the guys who've risen to the top playing possession football are also widely sought after. Two of the most well-known coaches right now are Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola. And I highly recommend watching the series All or Nothing about Manchester City on Amazon Prime. It's about Guardiola's team a few years ago. And it's quite clear from interviews with these guys that they're quite thoughtful and well-traveled. I couldn't name a single baseball manager who can speak 3 languages. So speaking of Manchester City,
They need it because the players are from all over the world.
There are 4 main football countries in Europe. There's England, Spain, Germany, and Italy.
Oh, those are the big
England
leagues.
has the Premier League, Spain has La Liga, Germany has the Bundesliga, and Italy has Serie A. So to take one country, they're all the same, but to take one country, England,
What do you mean they're all the
Premier
same?
League consists of 20 teams. Every team plays every other team, once at home and once
So
away.
many teams.
And these leagues don't have playoffs. You get 3 points for a win,
Yeah.
1 for a tie. The team with the most points at the end of the season wins.
Wins, yeah.
And this can and has come down to the final day of the season before. In the U.S., our leagues pretty much have the same teams every year. So if you suck, and even if you start to lose on purpose, you actually get rewarded with the top draft pick the next year. If you finish in last place in one of these leagues, they literally kick you out of the league.
Love that, yeah.
They
I
call
love
it
that.
relegation because that's a nicer sounding word.
It is, honestly, that's
Before we keep
drama.
going, here's a quick aside on the MLS. Major League Soccer is the top league in the United States. It's different in many ways than the European leagues. There's no
Oh, really?
relegation, so the teams do stay the same
Oh,
from
okay.
year to year, and there is a salary cap.
Oh.
Talent-wise, I guess globally speaking, it seems to be an okay league, but certainly not on par with any of the European
Yeah, the
leagues.
European players, I think,
So
are
under the
more
Premier
famous.
League, which is at the top, under them is a league called the English Football League Championship.
Those are the
3 teams who finish
regional
at the bottom of the
championships.
Premier League are relegated to the Championship for the next season and replaced by 3 teams from the Championship. The bottom 3 teams in the Championship are relegated to League 1. The bottom 3 in League 1 are relegated to League 2.
Yeah, love is like
whose
2,
losers
3, 1,
go
yeah.
to the National League.
A,
whose
B, C, D.
Losers are...
Yeah.
Nobody really cares about them except their moms at this part, but you get the
It's
idea.
sad, but yeah, I
Unless
get
you
it.
really get into soccer, you'll never hear about anything below the Premier League again.
Of course,
But
yeah.
Just so you're aware of what's happening down there.
Yeah.
This system does a few things. First off, just because you're near the bottom of the standings, your games can still be extremely important. They still
Yeah.
count because you're not trying to win the league anymore, but now you're trying to literally stay in the league. And
Exactly.
the higher the league you're in, the higher the check you get from TV contracts. So
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal. It also
There's
creates
almost an
this kind of
incentive.
theoretical meritocracy where you could start a team with a bunch of guys anywhere in the country, get into a kind of a tiny league, and then ultimately
up.
work your way up to
Yeah.
the Premier League. In reality, that'd be like trying to take a single A baseball team and work your way up to the majors, while the other better teams with bigger pocketbooks are trying to buy all your best players the whole way.
Oh,
For
because
the
they
teams at
steal the
top,
players.
Just winning the Premier League sounds pretty easy. You're playing maybe 1 game a week. But that's the catch. There's other things going on here. So there's also the Carabao Cup, which is a tournament open to the top 4 leagues in England. And then there's the FA Cup, which has been going on since like forever. That
What's
is literally
forever?
open to every team in England. So over 700 teams entered this one tournament last year.
700?
Imagine if every major and minor league baseball team had one giant tournament.
I was thinking
The
like
big team
40
wins. Yes,
or
they
a
could.
lot.
Well, the small teams upset the bigger teams. At some point, maybe a few will. But is it likely that a non-Premier League team is going to win? No, probably not.
Okay, unlikely.
More fun to think about in theory than practically.
I would love it if one of them win, actually.
The final tournament is the big one. Like, what if we could find the best team in Europe? And I don't mean like each country gets a team. That's the European Championship. That
That's
happens
the
every 4
champions,
years.
right?
This, I'm talking about the league clubs. So the best teams from all over Europe, from 55 different countries,
55
battle it out
countries.
each year. This is the UEFA Champions League. So as a side note on these acronyms here, FIFA is the organization that runs like big international tournaments like the World Cup. And they help to coordinate
world.
things across different regions. If you're an American, you probably heard of FIFA because somebody on SportsCenter mentioned somebody that was involved with some kind of corruption investigation or something. Anyway, within FIFA, the world is divided into 6 different regions.
6.
UEFA is Europe. That's where like the best players go. CONCACAF, you may have heard of, because that's
North
what the
America?
U.S. is in, the Confederation of North, Central American, and Caribbean
Oh, North and
Association
Central.
Football, which is short and sweet. And then there's like the rest of the world. And each one of these groups has tournaments with national teams and their league clubs, like the CONCACAF Champions League and the UEFA Champions League. And these are called like the Champions League, but really it's just a tournament. So the UEFA Champions League is played in conjunction with the UEFA Europa League, which is kind of like the NCAA and NIT basketball tournament.
Yeah, it's like they happen at the same time.
They play the qualifying rounds for the Champions League first. So if you get knocked out of the big boy tournament, but you finish high enough, you can just move down into the Europa League and try to win that. And I won't get into the qualifying, but typically you're going to have teams that you may have heard of as an American, like Manchester City, Liverpool, Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspur.
A lot of them ring a bell.
From Spain, they'd probably be Barcelona and Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid. Serie A from Italy, we'll have Juventus and Inter and Roma.
Yeah, a lot of like famous clubs.
Germany is pretty much dominated by Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. And then there's other popular teams like Paris Saint-Germain from France, and Lyon from France, and Ajax from the Netherlands. And then you throw in a few Russian teams and you're ready to party.
I never heard of that one.
So back to the Premier League. You remember how your team's playing that kind of standard 38-game schedule. So now, also at the same time, you're competing in the Premier League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and the Champions League.
There's so many.
There's like a bunch of other small one-off games happening too.
Oh, there's
also
also
if you have the best team, you're still probably not going to win all these tournaments just because of the wear and tear.
Obviously.
If you can win 3 trophies in a year, that's like special. That's called a treble. If you win 4, that's called a quadruple.
How often does that happen?
And so the biggest payday is for winning your league, although I, for some reason, find the Champions League is hard to beat for excitement. So even though you can, soccer teams tend to trade players less than they do in the U.S. Rather, teams will just buy players from their current club.
But how do you mean, like, you buy them?
Include your salary, obviously, but also something called a release clause, which is a fee that would go to the current club for that player. So while any team could negotiate a transfer fee with a player's current club, a release clause takes that current team just out of negotiations altogether. So a baseball player, unhappy with the situation, he could demand a trade, and they might trade him and he'd be happy. But if they refuse to trade him, then he's kind of stuck. Whereas a soccer player could just find another team willing to pay that release clause.
And you go,
and once a team agrees to pay the clause, then they can just negotiate directly with that player. Obviously, the better player, the higher the fee is going to be. So the current
obviously,
go out and find a reasonable replacement.
Yeah, people are going to be like, yeah, we don't care. Let's
most
pay
sports in the U.S. have a trade deadline, and that's followed by a few weeks afterward where players cannot move to another team. Soccer's kind of the opposite. So most of the time, you cannot move to another team. There are 2 periods a year called transfer windows that you can move during. So usually before and then halfway through the season. And you could sign a new contract.
You can just like switch middle.
You can't actually start playing for them until that next transfer window.
Okay.
And the last thing in terms of contracts is that in the U.S., most leagues have a draft, but soccer's pretty much like the Wild West. So teams assign players,
Wild West.
just say kids, like into their youth academy very young, like 10, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And smaller teams who find a really good player could also include something called a sell-on clause.
What's that?
When selling a player to a larger team that says, if the team buying that player turns around and sells the player again to an even bigger club, then that original team will get a percentage of that.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, because it's like we put some investment in this guy.
You're still here at this point. You probably want more. So what's next? There are like an unlimited number of top or best goal compilations on YouTube, which are kind of interesting in the sense that you can actually show, new people to soccer, the potential that the game has. Lots of Americans' exposure to soccer is like the Women's World Cup. And obviously we have a great team there, but
because
you never
it's better
really get to see what different strategies look like. Like look up Barcelona tiki-taka videos. You won't regret that. They make grown men look like children. As I mentioned, the All or Nothing series on Man City is great if you have Amazon Prime. And obviously just watching games is good. FIFA TV has
but they do have their own
that has lots of international matches. Or just look on YouTube for full football matches. You're smart, you'll find them. UEFA TV has old Champions League matches. I think you might have to register, but it's free. You'll probably want to follow BR's football channel on YouTube. They have a lot of good stuff, including this very funny series called The Champions, which I'd probably wait a little bit until you learn a little more about the top players before watching that.
Okay.
One place I always turn to when trying to learn a new sport is video games. So FIFA would probably help.
Oh yeah, because the video game, they're going to teach you along.
It has horrible reviews. That said, if you're just trying to learn the rules, like basic tactics and which players are on which teams and who plays where,
fair.
I would say
great.
it's been pretty helpful for me.
Good.
Most of the negativity toward the game is for the online, the FIFA Ultimate Team mode, where you end up paying for players for your team. But if you just avoid that, and stick to playing against the AI, then you should be okay. The only thing I hesitate to do is play as Barcelona, because you could control Leo Messi, and like, who am I to tell God what to do? So I usually avoid that part. The alternative here would be a game called Pez, which I've heard good things about, although it doesn't have licensing for many of the teams. So jerseys will look different and team names will be slightly off, which I guess might be confusing to someone new. And I think FIFA's player faces are a bit more recognizable too. News-wise, there's coverage everywhere of soccer, although I do enjoy the site onefootball.com, which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, which is, there's no sponsor for today's video. I just make these videos to push the boundaries of PowerPoint and see how mad I can make myself. Anyway, hopefully that helps somewhat. You're now ready to venture off beyond the coast of the United States and become an even bigger soccer fan. Just if you're leaving the U.S., call it football. They get mad if you call it soccer. Anyway, good luck. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, they do get a little mad if you refer to soccer as football. This was kind of funny, obviously, like very, very funny. I feel like, yeah, it's a lot of information, I have to say. I think I love several things. Like I actually like, I didn't know that it was like so big, because I think when you think about like FIFA, I don't know why I usually associate like FIFA with like every, like, yeah, football in general, but I didn't know that each continent had its own manager. It's not manager, it's like the whole association that regulates their whole their countries. So I had no idea there's a lot of them. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6, like as much as like as many continents as they are. There's like a ruler of that part of the world, which, okay, interesting. Didn't know that. I think there's something, because I think when you think about, like, I really like the fact that he was like, well, there's like a lot of, it's gonna be familiar to you if you like play, I think that FIFA, I think it was the game. He was like, it's gonna be familiar if you don't really know much about the sport. Yeah, you want to learn. Like, it's good if you play this game, because there's gonna be like more familiar faces, because otherwise you're not gonna know. Obviously, you don't know anything. You're just like, who are these guys? I think usually just by living in the world in this day and age, I think there are some names that like ring a bell. Like, you're like, oh yeah, I think I've seen this guy, or maybe I haven't seen him, like I don't recognize him, like his face, but I've heard of him, because they're very famous in the world. Like Messi, obviously, like he's like one of the most famous players like in these days. There's Cristiano Ronaldo, there's like there's the other guy, Neymar, and there's like another of them. I think he's Brazilian. Like, there's some of them that I think are like popular just by, I know that he's like a football player, but he does mention something that's quite interesting to me is the most like greatest players, probably like the better players are in Europe, because, well, that's obviously like they have like I think probably like the biggest league. Well, each country has its own league, but the whole championship, I think it's probably like the biggest. Or maybe I don't really know why that is. Maybe it's because Europe is like football. I was gonna say soccer. Football is very popular in Europe, and because he does mention that the other countries and the other regions, they all have their like CONCACAF or something. They all have their own like tournaments. But why is like the European one the most famous one? I think it's probably because it's either, and it's probably like he said, like better. It's because they have like the better players, because they all play there. Because I think maybe it's football is probably like the most popular sport in Europe, and it makes sense that obviously the greatest players are going to go there. Maybe they're not European, but they ended up playing there because, like I said, I know that Leo Messi, he's from Argentina. There's Neymar, and there's like another guy. They're like whatever. Like I look at Brazilian players, I know that they're like very famous, and obviously they end up playing in Europe. And Messi, he like played in Europe, so all of them are playing in Europe because it's like the hot spot. It's obviously you want to go there, and they do. It's really like I was shocked by he mentioned they recruit them as young as like 10, 11, like they're kids, and they obviously they see raw talent in like some little boy. Of course they're gonna like, no, we want him because we see potential. We think that he's gonna become like something great, and they do invest in them. I don't know how many like they end up because I don't know how like recruitment season or something like of those like little boys that they take in. I don't know how many of them actually do end up becoming like very famous players, but maybe you don't need to become, like Ronaldo or something. Like it's the fact that you're playing for like because those are the ones that I think they're not, you can't find like dimes a dozen. Like it's very like particular. They're not, you don't gonna find like 1,000 Messis. Obviously, like that's not a thing that happens. Like he's great because he's one of a kind. So the other players are maybe like, you're not going to get there, but you're just going to be a really good player and you're going to be playing in one of those leagues in one of those countries, in Italy, Germany, or Spain, or England. So I think that's enough. I think obviously for you're a good player and you're playing in the big leagues, of course that's enough. You don't need, and you're going to be famous, only that you're not going to be super famous as in like everyone knows your name. No, probably if people that know about football, they're going to know you, but they're not going to be like, oh, I have like worldwide recognition and everyone's going to know my name. It's like, well, no, but that's why they're the few of them. It's a smaller quantity of football players that you actually like do know their names if you don't really follow football. But yeah, so it's kind of surprising to me that they do like they recruit them as very, very young. And I do think it's fair that if another team comes along and they want him when they're older, that you're gonna have to pay the other smaller teams, because they were like, well, yeah, we recruit them for you and we also we taught them, so it's like we deserve a percentage of what you're getting. So it's like, I think it's very fair, and I think that's something that I like about, apparently, like it's all very fair, both in the kicking teams that are not at their best, and something like this. I think it evens up the field a little bit, and I really do like that. Because again, it's a great incentive. And he mentioned like in America, if you're not playing like in the United States, if you're not at your best, like if you're playing like he mentioned that they even play bad on purpose. I have no idea why they would want to play bad on purpose, but maybe that's something that like they do for some reason that I'm not aware of. And it's not, obviously, like you can't really do that, like it's bad. So and apparently in the United States they don't really care. It's like, oh, we know that they're playing bad on purpose, or maybe they just like the level is not there with the players, so you're not good, but it's like whatever, no one cares. In this one, I like that. No, we do care, and you have to maintain that level, because otherwise you're gonna get kicked out, which I like, because again, it shows that you're constantly improving and you're not like just falling asleep, being, oh, I'm great, everyone says I'm great, like I'm just gonna stay here sleeping. No, it's like you have to work for it, and I like the fact that you really do have to work in order to like stay there. So I'm like, I like that. It's great. Also, I think something that really was like, well, I want to know how often it happens that the smaller teams and like the second divisions actually like win on the regional leagues in their own countries. He mentions it's not like, it doesn't happen like that often, obviously, but I want to know like how has it happened, because otherwise it's going to be a huge surprise. Obviously, you're expecting the big teams to actually like are the ones that are constantly, like he said, like all these teams or these clubs you've probably heard of, like the Liverpool, Manchester, Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern, like all of those like famous clubs that oh, I know that those are like, it's a football club, but I want to know how often it happens that like a second division team or an unknown team for like the ones that do not follow this actually do like win over them, because I'd be like, wow, that would be quite shocking, quite dramatic. I would love that. But I do like think they do have like a lot of like sport tournaments like happening at the same time. which I think it can be quite overwhelming. I don't know how can you follow along all of these things, because it's maybe you only follow the ones like, well, the big ones like the Germany, the Italy one, but it's a lot. Like even if you're just following one of them, it's a lot. And you obviously also want to follow along your own country's like league. And it's again, it's a full-time job, like just following along all those tournaments, because it's a lot of games. It's a lot of matches, like he said, not games, matches. But yeah, I'm gonna end up with something that really like, I'm like, wait, what? He said that Americans usually think that football is boring, and I'm like, how could you think it's boring? Because it's, again, I don't really know much about it, but I watch football games, and it's honestly like very exciting, because like he also said, like anyone can score. Like you're not like, you can turn around for 5 seconds and oh, you missed it. So it's like, it's very exciting because everyone can score at all times. And I think my perception of American football is it's the opposite. It's like it's a very slower paced game. So I'm like, I think it's actually slower, because you constantly you're breaking the thing. Like it's like I think it's like 5 seconds or something. So it's like you're constantly like, they have to stop at all times. Which one in football, it's not, there's no stopping. Like maybe obviously like someone gets injured, but it's like constantly running. So it's like, how can you think they're lazy? And then can you think like it's a slow sport? I don't know what kind of matches they've seen. There are some matches that are like that, kind of boring for you as, the one that's watching, the spectator. Yes, there are some matches that are like that you're just boring, because like he said, you're just passing the ball and there's no excitement, which of course it happens, but usually like there's just people running throughout the whole field. So it's like, I'm sorry, but it's not boring at all. And it's quite shocking that you as maybe someone that follows American football thinks the opposite, because to me, I'm like, I think American football is actually the one that's like not boring because they're running, but it's like you're constantly breaking. So it's like, I don't understand how can you think it's boring if there's the excitement is always like around the corner. But yeah, hopefully you find this as entertaining and as informative as I did, and I'll see you soon. Bye.